a company that's like rethinking its entire experience, standing up a prototype on it to show to customers. So excited about it. I also think it's so easy to build a bunch of crap now, right? And this used to be an argument that I got into with people when I would try to teach them in like early days of teaching. I would teach about like MVPs and how we could do concierge testing and lightweight stuff. And they would go, code is so cheap now. I don't need to do any of this. I should just build it and put it out there and see if anybody uses it. And I'm like, once again, the whole point of experimenting is to be close to your customers to get that feedback. And if we're just building a bunch of crap in Lovable and Bolt and never doing that, again, that core of product management, getting the feedback, understanding the customers, being really close to them, it's still not going to work. And you're going to have all of this broken code, all of this. And let's be honest, like those things do not write a small amount of code. It's like very long and lengthy, and you don't need all that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Supra Insider. This time, Mark and I sat down with Melissa Perri. Melissa has spent the last 15 years coaching product managers and product leaders, advising CEOs and VCs and investors on how to really level up the product leadership functions of the companies that they work with. She's actually been a product manager, product designer. She's an instructor who's spent time at Harvard and a couple other institutes. Melissa is as legit as it gets when it comes to product leadership experts. In this conversation, Mark and I went into a few really meaty topics with Melissa. We started by talking about what product strategy really means, something top of mind for her and for a lot of people these days, and why we often skip the hard part of product strategy, which is not just focusing on the outcomes, but like really how are we going to get there and what does it mean to get there? Like what are the actual investments? We talked about how CEOs and chief product officers find chemistry and what makes for the best matches between these types of leaders, and how when you want to level up from a director and a VP to the CPO title, you really have to make a mindset shift to stay relevant and keep growing with the company. And we finished with what I would argue is the most interesting kind of speculative part of the conversation, which is really about where AI is taking our discipline and the product management function and why it could be a double-edged sword in a product strategy context. I love this conversation. I learned a lot, and I hope you will enjoy it as well. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Follow us on Substack. Give us a rating. It'll help us a ton and help future people discover us while also making sure you never miss an episode. Thank you. All right, we're live. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Mark and I think, know you best for your book, Escaping the Build Trap, but you spend a lot of time talking to founders and leadership teams at big companies about how they're focusing on product strategy. And nowadays, I'm sure lots of conversations on incorporating AI into their product strategy. So maybe one place we could start this conversation is just with all of your experience and all the conversations, how do you define product strategy today? What does that really mean to you?
Yeah, I think product strategy is one of those very misunderstood things, and everybody's got their own definitions for it. But mine really centers around like the core of what a product strategy is. It's a enabling framework that allows the teams to make decisions about their software and what they're building and how they solve customer problems that moves the business forward. So it's gives you enough detail on what we're trying to achieve, where we're trying to go, where you can deploy it in an organization and people can make decisions. So it's not, hey, we're going to go build this, right? And everybody has to just dictate down features to them. It's more about, am I allowed to make these choices or solve these particular problems to go after the bigger vision? And I see it as a system that's made up of the product vision or the portfolio vision, depending on what kind of organization you're in. And then achievable, I like to call them strategic intents at the business level, but also initiatives at the product level. So those are things like, we want to solve these problems for these types of customers. Here's the outcome that we're looking at. Like enough shape to give people enough direction where we're not all going in a million different directions, but enough freedom to actually be able to make a choice. And there's a very careful line in that. Like I say it, but doing it is really hard. It's like I see so many people actually struggle with it. And have a hard time actually formulating what that is. And I think there's a lot of trial and error that goes into making a great, robust product strategy that gets overlooked by many people in a leadership position or starting with this at the first time. And it's so much goes into like product strategy. It's not just about where we're going to build in the software. It's like understanding your customers, understanding your market, understanding your technology, understanding where you're winning, where you're losing, your competitive space, how technology is changing, what people are buying from you today, why they're not buying other things, what their problems are, the nature of all those things, the design of it, like how you execute, like all of that goes into it. And I don't think we take enough time to step back and actually do the analysis before we set the strategies sometimes. Instead is go get these goals. And that's not a strategy, right? That's just here's a bunch of outcomes we want to hit. That's not a strategy that aligns people and puts them into place. So I think that is one big thing I see missing in a lot of organizations. And the best product leaders that I've met are really good at putting those things together. And they're really good about understanding the nuances of the organization as well to say, hey, in this organization, because we have such experienced people, let's say, I can be a little bit looser with like my direction. And I trust people can go out and decide that direction for themselves. And in other organizations, it's like, hey, we might not have people who are very skilled at product management. Yeah, I have to be a little more descriptive about what I'm looking for here. And I think there's a careful balance there. And I think what's happening with the product strategy piece, wrap this back around, is that we concentrated so much on telling people like outcomes over outputs so much in product management. And I know I said that in Escaping the Build Trap too. And I agree with that. But some people who are new to this, they just ran with all I need is outcomes and everybody else can just figure out the rest. And that's not true. So the craft of product management is how do we figure out what's going to meet those outcomes? And that has to happen at every level, not just at the product manager team level.
Yeah, I remember my journey just getting up to speed with strategy. I never really had to develop this muscle until I went to Facebook. And what I learned at Facebook is that almost every team is expected to have 2-year visibility into the teams that they're leading. And I had never had the luxury of thinking 2 years ahead in early stage startups. It was always go, 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 thinking really like weeks, maybe months ahead at a time. And so about, I want to say like probably around my year mark at Facebook, I spent an entire weekend. I just wrote 20 pages on paper for what I think my team strategy was after having several failed product reviews that were not hitting. And so I feel like that was my forcing function to wrestle with what strategy means to me. And to your point, where I landed is basically there's like an end state, like some kind of vision you want to end up at. And then there's like where you are today. So there's like a clear gap between like where you want to be and where you are. And then if you could break down what the gap is in terms of like problems, whether that's problems for customers or business, et cetera. And then you could outline a like Facebook 2-year roadmap really in terms of 6 months at a time. So like basically, if you could lay out a general plan over 6 months at a time for 2 years of how you're going to chip away at those gaps to get to the point where you now have this future state existing, that's basically the broad strokes of how we used to think about strategy. Do you have any reactions to like that high level way of thinking about it? Is that aligned with how you think about it?
Totally. Yeah. Like when I teach people strategy, and this was just like a new course I put together in Product Institute as well, it's how do you define that vision? So, what is that? Where are we going? And it's different for different levels, right? Like a chief product officer at a really large organization is going to be thinking 5 to 10 years out. Smaller organization, 2 years out, right? And then it goes on, I think of time horizons as it goes back to your product managers on teams. So like a team might be thinking, what am I going to do for the next quarter that helps get me towards that vision, right? Like a director might be thinking about the next 6 months to a year type strategy, right? And then a leader might be filling in those 2 years, right? So all of those things layer up, and it's really about how fast you can move. Like how fast can you achieve anything? So if your company is really slow and they can't ship and actually get measurable results quickly, those time horizons usually are longer. If you're like a very nimble startup and you're shipping all the time and you're growing, you can track it, you can actually get those results, it's going to be shorter. So I try to think about it that way. And then when we're looking at those initiatives, that's exactly how I think about with your 2-year roadmap. It's where are we today? And that's a current state analysis. And that's where I think like nobody actually does that. Nobody puts together like a picture of here's where we are today, right? Like, here's our most profitable customers and here's what they're using. The people who are churning are in this customer segment. And here's the feedback that they gave on our product about like why they're churning. This is the people who use these types of features tend to do X, Y, and Z more. If we go after this market segment, we'll be more profitable because those people tend to have these other problems that we can solve adjacently, like anything like that to bring it back in. But that's like the current state of where we are. And then it's figuring out how do we get there. Those are the initiatives, right? Like how do we systematically knock down a bunch of problems to get there. I like to say like it's going to be fuzzy. Like you're going to change what's going to come up in a year and a half based on what you learn, but broad strokes are important. So I say what's nearer term should be like a little more crystallized, and what's longer term, you could just be like, this is a hypothesis right now. We'll learn more. We'll adjust as we go. But that totally resonates with what you're saying.
I'll just say one more thing, Mark, and then I'm curious what you're going to ask or say. But my biggest learning, I think, in that whole process was just that you're not married to your strategy, and that you put it together, and it's a conversational artifact. It's like a best description of where your head's at. But I think one of the most liberating things to me about doing that exercise was realizing like you could update your strategy on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis. You're not stuck with it. And I think that reduced a lot of my anxiety about putting together a strategy, because I was worried that 2 years strategy means I'm like marrying or I'm committing to what we're going to do for 2 years. And that wasn't true.
And to be fair, there are many organizations that do treat it that way. So it's like
Hmm.
there are cultures where you give them a 2-year roadmap. They're like, oh, okay, this is what we do. And I think there's so much education that needs to be done in those places to talk about what it really is with strategy and how do you morph it and why should it actually emerge over time. But I agree. If you're in a place that actually accepts change, because that's everything's changing, right? This is what you should be like. This is how you should operate. And that's how you should think about what your strategy looks like and not be afraid to change it.
Yeah. The thing that I was going to say is that it's such a good point that I think a lot of the product organizations that I work with, when they think about strategy, they really focus like, here's where we want to go, but they don't really spend that much time doing the hard work of here's what's working, here's what's not working. And so I'm curious, and I think that's probably true for a lot of other product orgs. I'm curious, what are some of the most important questions to ask to really figure out where you are right now?
Yeah. So I've had to do this a lot with organizations where I've been a board member or I help advise the CPOs. In many of those places too, I would say there's a lack of a business strategy first, right? We know we want to exit or we want to do this thing eventually, but it's like, okay, where are we doing this? So we can talk about that in a minute. But for the product strategy piece, it's about looking at the business lens of like, how do we want to grow and are we able to grow? And I think some of this comes hand in hand when you're a SaaS company as well. But it's who are our most profitable customers today? What are the problems that we're solving for them? Are we solving them well? Are we not solving them well? If we're not solving their problems well, like what's the feedback we have been getting? Like where are the gaps? Are we losing some customers we do care about? Sometimes there's good churn, but like the ones that we do care about, the ones that we want to stick with, where are they going? Why are they leaving? What's happening there? There's a whole element, I think, too, about if we are looking at growth, could we solve these problems that we are solving well for people in adjacent functions, right? Or adjacent roles or adjacent businesses or types like that, markets, where we can bring that into them? Or do we make a decision about how do we want to expand, right? Like, how do we want to grow? If it's not solving different problems, is it going after different markets? Is it about like expanding geographically? What do we want to do to actually grow there? And what are we primed to do? So a lot of it comes back to like some growth business stuff. And I think without that, it's really hard to set the product strategy and the product portfolio strategy. And in a lot of organizations I walk into, those business things aren't really well codified. I've seen it be, we want to grow 100% year over year. And you're like, how though? Right? But what are we going to do to target that? Right? Like it's a great goal. It's a great outcome. I want to grow 100% year over year too. But what's going to get us there? Is it expanding in our current market? Is there still room? Right? Is it going up market? Is it going down market? Is it tackling different problems? Like we said, like what are we prioritizing across the whole business to get aligned? And then you go into the product portfolio and you look at the vision there and you say, okay, if these are the places we want to play, what's working with our product now, what's not, and how's the vision going to evolve to do that? And then that's also looking at like, how's technology evolving where we could solve these problems for these markets in ways that haven't been done before or differentiated. And those are two big things that I don't see a lot of companies do when they do this analysis. It's like figuring out where you want to differentiate, right? What's going to be the thing that gets people here? And then it's also how do you prioritize how you grow or what you concentrate on at the highest level? And that also breaks down all those barriers between like sales and marketing and everybody like asking for stuff and ending up on a roadmap and it's not all coherent. If the whole company has that direction, now we're all aligned. Like now marketing's aligned, sales aligned, and products aligned because we all know we're going up market. And that's the most important thing we could possibly do. So all the conversation is around that. So everything that we're talking about building is around that. There's no like, here, just like slip my pet projects in here, because they're being judged for success on it as well. So when I look at those pieces, I think that's really like the important part that's missing in a lot of those areas, is those defined areas.
One thing I want to touch on is that maybe we can put a pin on and come back is how do you think about competition and
Oh,
like
yeah.
how much attention to pay to? But one question to just follow up to what you were saying is, let's say you're a product leader and that you're noticing what you were just mentioning, right? That the business has a goal, but it's like it's big, right? And it's low fidelity, which it might be like growing 100% year over year. Like who do you have to talk to push for that clarity, right? Because I think you could play a key role there, but it's probably not your role unless you're like in a GM type role. So yeah, how do you think about that?
Yeah, if I'm like a product manager on a team, I'm probably going to go to my product leader, right, and try to push for that. Now, if I'm a product leader, this is where I actually think great CPOs do a fantastic job with this. So when I worked with Insight Partners, a big thing that we did with their portfolio was place chief product officers. And when there was an absence of a company strategy as defined, there's always a strategy vision type thing, but it's like, how is it defined? When there was absence of that, sometimes the CPOs came in and were the linchpin that kind of pulled the entire executive team together to figure out what it is that we're actually going to go after. So we would do the work and we would figure out like, how do we prioritize this, and work with the CEO to say this or this or this, right? Like, and do the analysis behind it to figure out where it was. I find that a lot of companies that are started by founders and have founder CEOs still, they haven't done this before, right? Like they haven't done this work before. So sometimes I'll come into the organization and they don't know how to do it, but they're really receptive to help, right? I'm not dictating what your strategy is. We're going to do it together. I've got frameworks. I know how to do this analysis. I'm going to pull a bunch of options together. We're going to evaluate them. We're going to figure out what's going to get to your vision, right? And then you're going to write this up and present it to the company. And I think that's the best relationship in that kind of scenario. So I'd say, if you are a product leader, you might have to fill in the gaps. If you're in an organization where there is a CEO founder who has not done this before, and be like, let's do it together, right? I have this. I'm going to do the legwork. I'll get my team to do a bunch of analysis. Let's talk about it and just bring everybody together and define it. If you're in an organization where the leadership maybe has it, sometimes they just don't communicate well. It's just stuck in people's heads. And I've seen that like tons of times. You've got people who are great at strategy at the top. They understand their market hardcore. The GMs like really understand the business, but you're like, I need to put it into a tangible thing where I can now prioritize against it, right? And some of that is getting it out of their head onto paper. And in that case, I've worked with people in that position before where I'm like, I'll write it down for you. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Let me write it for you. And I'm going to show it back to you. And then I could be like, is this it? And they'll be like, oh, no. And I'm like, cool. Can you change it? And then they'll change it. And then you're like, oh, okay, that's better. Let me ask you these questions. And you just go back and forth asking questions until it becomes more clear. And then you've got it written down. And when they're like, yeah, that's it. It's great. Okay, let's go do this off of there. So sometimes it's just going back and forth and asking questions a bunch.
It's so interesting. I think that experience lines up a lot with what I've seen, especially with like early stage founders where they just genuinely don't have, let's call it a mature process for documenting and creating that artifact that allows people to understand the strategy. But what I'm curious to get your take on is that founders are very strategic, or at least the successful ones are very strategic. So I'm curious, in your experience, what do you think is the difference between the kind of like mature way of approaching strategy and maybe like the implicit kind of like tribal way of doing strategy, and like the phases leading up to this moment where you might start formalizing it?
I think like I said before, there's always a strategy. It's like, what went into building that strategy is one question, right? The second question is how we're communicating it. How well is it understood out there? So I found that you are right. Like founders are super strategic. They want to get there. A lot of building a 0 to 1 product though is like rapid experimentation. And what I find is that when they start to scale, sometimes they lose that because there's so many things you could possibly build, right? Now you have customers and now they're asking for stuff. So it's kind of like, oh, we have to really go out and do all the hardcore stuff that we used to do? It's like we already got a laundry list of stuff that people are asking for. Let's build it. And to a point, to get to a stable point, you have to do that. But then I find like organizations get into this mode where, again, it becomes like whack-a-mole. Okay, but the requests are still coming in. So at a certain point, you have to step back and say, this is never going to stop, right? Like people are always going to be requesting things. But we have to have a framework for saying no. And that's a strategy. So like that's like even the beginnings of a strategy. But sometimes when we're getting so many requests, I feel like it's hard to say that, right? I want another customer. I want another customer. I want this person to be happy. And I think that's where founders can get a little stuck, right? Because it feels like your thing is just blowing up, which is amazing, right? It's a great feeling. It's fantastic. But then when you're not paying attention at one point, what I've seen is like these companies start to scale up and then they plateau at this point. And it's not even like a hard plateau, it's still growing. But you start to look around and you realize, I don't know what anybody's working on. And I also am not sure if everybody's working on the right thing. And you have this moment, right? And I think that's the part where one, you need to get the visibility that you need. And then two, you have to take a look at it as the leader and say, what do I need to do to make sure people are building the right things? And then that's where you implement the strategy piece of it. So I don't like when we talk about mature processes for it, like this should be a repeatable thing. And I see everybody leave strategy for the beginning of the year kickoff or September, and then I'm going to budget, right? And I hate that. I'm like, this should be always going on, right? Like you should be setting it, doing like the first time you do it, I feel like it is a ton of analysis. It takes a long time. And then you set it. But then you're revisiting it, right? And you're making the way that you do that analysis repeatable. You're making the feedback loops come through and you're gut checking it along the way, like every quarter, every month, whatever it is. And then that keeps it evergreen. It keeps it fresh, right? And then you're not just like stopping everything in September and resetting a strategy. And I think sometimes people get into this mode of thinking you do have to do that, right? I got to stop everything and do my strategic visioning this year. And I've seen it. I've seen all the offsites. I've seen all the like company retreats to do that. And I think generating the brainstorm is always good to ask people and get people's ideas on it, but it shouldn't just be a moment in time. It should be constantly what you're thinking about. And I think instead we just picture it as like, that's what we're supposed to do as leaders, right? Like founders are just like, oh, that's how I observed everybody else doing it, but it just doesn't mean that's necessarily right. Right. And they also see, you see the results of people's strategies, right? Like Steve Jobs coming out and talking about the Apple launch 3 times a year. Steve Jobs is not thinking about strategy 3 times a year. He's thinking about it every freaking day. Like, right. Like that was the case. So we see these results and we don't think about what actually goes into making those results. And it's not just a moment in time. It's like something that becomes habitual. But I also have a lot of empathy for founders because so many of them were not taught these things, right? Like they were super smart and they found this problem and they like built this amazing company. And it's also hell, you build like $100 million company. It's crazy, right? That's impressive as all hell. But then you get to the scale part, right? And sometimes they're just out of their element because they've never done it before. And that's okay. And I've also met so many like founders, CEOs who are like, what am I supposed to be doing now? Right? Because I gave up the reins to the product people, right? And maybe I didn't give them up all the way and I'm still like meddling and they're getting mad at me. And it's because they usually just don't know. They know their role is to run the company, but there's no playbook for how. And I think that's a big area, I think, for like VCs and PE firms and stuff to like work with founder CEOs as well to help them with that, right? This is what you should be doing now. And I don't think a lot of them step in and do that. But I've seen so many founders be so open to that guidance because it's not like, maybe if it's coming from a PE VC firm, like it could feel like meddling, but I just feel like it's more like coaching. It's okay. If I'm going like, I run a program for VPs going to CPOs because it's different. It's just a different type of role. Like you have to learn different things. It's the same thing to go from like founder of a small company to a CEO at scale. Like you can't imagine that Mark Zuckerberg didn't have anybody coaching him. Like he surrounded himself.
If anything, it's the opposite of that, right? It's like these guys are notorious, like the Brian Chesky's, the Sam Altmans, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world seem like they're on the complete extreme end of the growth mindset people who every day is like a whole new learning adventure, right? Like an opportunity to completely like reinvent themselves and fit themselves to whatever today requires or tomorrow requires. And I think some of them talk about being 6 months ahead of where the company is. That's where their personal growth needs to be. It's easy in concept to think about that, but I think it must be so freaking uncomfortable in practice to push yourself in those ways. So I can see why people avoid it, right? They find maybe they get comfortable.
So comfortable. That's a problem I see with people who are becoming chief product officers as well. It's really comfortable to work with the engineers, meddle with your team, get into the documentation and put your little roadmap together. But like the important stuff is actually building the bridges between the executives, thinking about company strategy, asking hard questions, like pushing on people to help create this bridge, create this stuff. And it's so comfortable to go back to doing what we've been doing for 10, 15 years, right? This is new. So new things are always going to feel uncomfortable. And I think the people who are really successful at it break themselves out and start to think about it as an opportunity and think about, hey, if I do this, this could help me unlock so much more. But then there's also the people who just feel like they can't make time for it because they're too busy, right? Or they got too much on their plate. And that's a huge trap. I think some people get into, some leaders get into, some founders, because there's so much to take off, so much on your plate. Like, how do you take anything off to actually concentrate on this stuff?
You could write a next book, the busy trap.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Similar to Bill Trap. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a story that I see happen all the time is like, since the CEO is like or the founder CEO is the person driving the strategy since day one, they're the person that they're bringing the company to product market fit. It's really hard to let go of that habit of that top-down strategy. And then you think you want to hire a product leader that is going to drive the strategy, but then you still cannot let go of that habit. And then you still push the strategy down. That person eventually gives up. We're like, okay, I'm going to do whatever they do. But then the company keeps growing, right? And the surface area keeps getting bigger. And at that point, you're like in this really uncomfortable situation where you've just created this organization where it just takes orders at the strategy level, almost like a strategy factory, if you will. And I'm curious, like, what can founders do at that point? Maybe like when they realize, oh shit, like that's my fault, right? I've created this culture where I've been super top down. Like, what can you do at that point to fix it?
You know, it's really funny. Like, I have also hired so many like product leaders in for founder CEOs. And when I meet with them, like the first thing I do in that stage was like, I meet with them, I talk about what is their strategy. Hopefully, if I haven't been working with them, I'm like, tell me about your strategy, tell me about your vision. And I see how clearly they can articulate it. The people who have super strong visions and super strong strategies, I'm like, how do you know this is going to work? How confident are you in this? And I try to gauge, like, do they think they have it all figured out in their head and they're not going to budge? Or are they like, I need somebody to go tell me if this is going to work, right? Like, I'm open to it. And I've met some people who are like, nope, I'm super visionary. I know my customers super well. Like, I've got this strategy laid out. Now I need somebody to hold together the product management team and just execute on it. And I'm like, okay, fine. You don't get a chief product officer. You're like looking for a director, VP of product, like somebody who can operationalize this, but not somebody who's going to be super strategic. It's never going to work, right? I'm looking for somebody who can challenge you on some of the minute details. But if this person is not aligned with your vision and your strategy, it's never going to work out. And I've never seen it work out. And that's fine. Like, it's their company. So cool. But don't trick yourself into hiring somebody you think should be visionary and strategic when you want to be the visionary and strategic one. Because then you'll just be at odds. Because everybody who is visionary and strategic, they want to go after their vision, right? Like, they want a chance to actually do it. And if they don't get a chance to do it, then they're not going to feel good about it. So I've met plenty of like fantastic VPs of product who are like great at operationalizing things, taking that vision, putting it into a roadmap, figuring out strategically how to get there, maybe tweaking some stuff as it goes, but they're not completely coming up with a vision from scratch, right? It's not their vision, it's the founder's vision. And that's fine. And I've seen that work well with those CEOs and founders. So if you hire that person, that relationship usually works pretty well. If you hire somebody who's not that, it doesn't work well. So I think you have to be honest, and I will make them be honest. I'm like, honestly, do you really want that person? Because I'm going to tell you right now, like, you hire that person, they're going to get upset. They're going to push back on you. Are you going to get upset about them? I'm going to push back on you right now. Let me like poke holes in your vision. Are you mad at me? What's your feeling about this? Are you looking for somebody who's going to challenge you on this stuff? And some of them are looking for that. They're like, hey, I'm not married to this, but this is my thought. And they will say to me too things like, I don't think I'm wildly wrong about it, but I could be off on some things. Fine. Okay. We're getting there. Then there are ones where they're like, my vision, it's so huge and it's super customer centric, but it's so high level and they have absolutely no opinions on how to get there. And that's the people who can hire the chief product officer who's strategic, right? As long as you agree with that vision, or you're like, I know I want to solve this problem. We're like, one healthcare company I worked with was like, we want to be the backbone of healthcare. And the founder said that. And I was like, what does that mean? And it had grown and it was a couple $1 billion business at this time. And it got to the point where he was like, I just want to make like things better for people. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, you need actually a more strategic CPO who can fill in those gaps. Like, for who do we care about? These types of doctors, this type of, is it this hospital? Is it a patient-centric approach? Is it a nurse-centric approach? Like, let me get into the finer details of how we do that. And they became more of like a visionary looking at trends, like spokesperson type thing of the company, right? And then your CPO is a little bit more strategic and like, how do we actually put all these things together, right? To go make a big company, right? To choose all those places. And I think that works well in that case. So it really depends like what kind of archetype you have as a CEO founder. And I try to teach a lot of the CPOs I work with on like how to diagnose like what kind of person you're working for. And founders are always hard. There's all different types of founders, but I also try to teach them, I'm like, you have to empathize because founders usually have so much money on the line. They're also wildly successful. Like they would not be hiring you and paying your salary if they were not successful. So you might not like agree with all of their decisions, but it's not like they're stupid. And I do see a lot of first time product leaders make the mistake of coming in and working with founders and acting like they're stupid. I'm like, that person just built a $200 million business. They're not stupid, right? Like they just might need a little more direction, a little bit more data backed informed stuff, but there's something there and you got to work with them to pull it out, right? So take what they know and then put it back into data and then try to form it going forward. And I think if founders like have burnt the bridges with product people before, it's because you weren't being honest with yourself about what you actually needed and what you wanted to do and what you needed somebody else to do. And I tell them that I'm like, if you're looking for somebody to just operationalize this stuff and you don't want the visionary strategic person, don't get that person. There are plenty of people out there who can do this, right? Don't just hire somebody because you think that's what you should do. Hire the person that you actually need.
Do you think it's people not being honest, or is it more people not knowing what they need or want? Because like both. Yeah.
I have to educate people a lot on what a CPO does. Like I have scorecards and stuff. I'll pull them up and I'm like, okay, this is what a VP of product does. This is what a CPO does. This is what you would do as a CEO. And I've also had conversations with founders who've been like, I don't know whether I should hire a CPO or if I'm the CPO. So I'll put it out and I'm like, okay, if you want to stay the CEO or if you want to move into a CPO role, this is what a CPO does. This is what a CEO does. Here's what a CTO does, right? Like, where do you gravitate? Like, where is your skill set? What do you know how to do? And a lot of times they see that and they go, oh yeah, I don't actually want to be the CPO. I don't know how to do any of that. And I'm like, okay, so now you can come over here. I said, or we can teach you how to do this stuff. Like, what do you want to do? But some of them choose like, when they see that, they opt out a lot of times. But so then I go back into, okay, how are you going to be involved with the product team? How do you want to work with them? Are you willing to give up these types of things to somebody else to bring them in?
So this kind of like introspection and I think self-awareness about where the CEO is and where they need help and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then finding a compatible CPO candidate who kind of has the complementary strengths where the CEO needs help, et cetera. That's huge for establishing a really good fit between a CPO and a CEO or a founder CEO as they scale. One thing we've talked about on the podcast is how CPOs have super short tenures. Like on average, it's like something like what, 12 to 18 months or something.
Oh, 12 to 18 months? That's fast. Okay.
Mark, haven't we? What's the data that we looked at? It's like
I think
maybe 18 months.
Yeah. It's like, I think it was
So-
like 18 months. But yeah.
Like what size
definitely
company?
like.
So curious. I didn't know this, but
I'm guessing it's like venture-backed companies, probably before Series DE, like up to Series DE or something.
Like B2D, B2E, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I'm like curious to get your take on is, so we've talked about that self-reflection and finding that fit, but when you think of the most successful matches or the most successful pairings of a CPO in your experience and a founder CEO, does anything else come to mind for kind of what you saw really get the sparks going and that made it really successful?
I think founders are passionate about what they do, right? So you got to hire somebody else who's also passionate. And I think that's one of the quickest ways to get a founder to tune out of a CPO. It's just like, they don't really care about my business and like these problems that I solve. And this is my entire life. And I've been doing this for 10 years. And you gotta be passionate about it. I think you also have to have similar communication styles, like compatible communication styles, let's say. You have to get along to a certain point, right? And if you don't, so there's this human connection element on it. I enjoy working with this person every day? Because you're gonna have to do that, right? Like it's those things I think that help. I think it's a willingness, like by the CPO to step back and say, I know this is this person's show and I'm here to help them. And I find that attitude when you come in, like really sets you up for success, right? And I've seen so many CPOs who are like super arrogant and just come in and be like, I know better than this person. And I don't even know how they got to this point. And it's just a recipe for disaster, right? You have to have an emotional intelligence around that for sure.
It's like a step aside. The experts have arrived. Now let us
Exactly.
do things like the right way. It's so offensive. It's
Yeah.
just rude, right? It's like fundamentally disrespectful, I feel like.
Yeah. And it's also about like concessions. You're not going to be able to do everything the exact right way. I think if you're betting on perfection, you'll never find it at any company. So you're like, what boundaries am I willing to work around and where am I willing to let stuff go? They might not be doing it perfectly, but if they get from here to here, that was your job, right? You wanted to get them from here to here. Did they get there? Cool. It doesn't have to be perfect along the way. It doesn't have to, you have to make concessions to build relationships and to move stuff. And I find too many people get like really stuck in perfection. And it's not about perfection, it's about results. So that's a big piece, I think, looking at it as well. I was thinking about your tenure for the CPOs too. One thing I could say about as stage, and this is like how we used to think about it when I was working with VCs, there would be some great CPOs I'd be working with, and they're like, I'm a little burnt out. Like, I don't know if I really want to go back into a company. We used to tell them, we're like, this is like a 2-year tour of duty. This company has to go from here to here in 2 years. You can do it. You've done it before. You're also going to get a really nice exit when we exit because we got a 2-year time horizon here, right? We got a 2-3 year time horizon. Can you come in and just do this? And sometimes they come in and they're literally like a turned around, execute it, knock it out of the park, and then they leave because like that was the expectation. And I don't think that's bad necessarily. I think there's probably some data in there about the wrong hires and founder dynamics, I'm sure, company dynamics and stuff. But I also don't think tenure, as long as you get results, is something to look at there. I've worked with some fantastic CPOs who've come in for 18 months to 2 years and they righted the ship, they got it to where it was, and like that's what they had asked them to do. But they knew they didn't want to be there for 10 years. They like came in, they said, I want to take a break. Like I'm burnt out. I didn't really want to go in here for 2 years, but this is really exciting. I love this opportunity. This is a really cool company. And I'm willing to put in 2 to 3 years. And I don't think that's bad as long as it gets it from A to B. So I wouldn't think about it, the time horizons as well, like of people being in there, as necessarily a bad thing, as long as you can execute.
I work a
Makes
lot with people on the market, in the job market, who when I ask them like what would success look like for finding your next role and landing in your next company, we talk about various things, but one of the things that I hear from people is wanting longevity.
Hmm.
People not wanting to be back in the market looking for their next thing
Yeah.
within the next like year or two. Now you could say there's a certain kind of like mercenary mindset that some executives or operators might have where they're like, I'm the guy or gal that comes in and we do 2 years, we go from this stage to this stage, and then I pull out my parachute and I go and I land somewhere soft and I do the same thing again. But I think for a lot of people that I talk to, they want that longevity. And I'm curious, if you think about the product leaders that have had the most longevity in the roles that you've gone into, people that have really scaled with the company for many years, are there any things that stick out about those kind of like fits and those
Oh, yeah.
matches that are different than those kind of like super successful 2-year stints?
Yeah. I wouldn't call the people mercenary who comes in and does it. I think that's a bad term for it because you know what you're doing.
Missionaries, because they have to have the
Yes,
alignment and
it's
the
a mission,
excitement
right?
about the market.
It is very much a mission, right? And I'm the type of person who comes in, I try to set stuff up and go, but I'm also like, I'm not full time anywhere. So like it's on purpose, right? And you do a lot of leverage in 6 months, right? And I've been places for a year where it goes, you can get it up to a certain point, but then like my goal has always been to hand it off to somebody who's going to grow it for like longer. The people who stay in longer and are really there, there's a couple things. Like one, they're willing to grow and they invest in themselves to learn at what they need to do at the next level. They're not just saying, I'm stuck in my current role. This is how we've always done it. I'm going to keep operating this way. So the people who grow really successfully with the company, and I have seen quite a few of them, there's a very big difference when you go from like small startup stage. We used to map this out and explain the stages, but like you've got 0 to 1, the founder is the product leader. You've got this usually growing one product line up to product market fit. And usually around the 10 to $20 million in ARR market, you will find like a VP of product. That's the first VP of product hire that comes in and gets it around 10 or up to 10, right? 8 to 10, something like that. Now that person's got to go from 10 to 20 and 30. And then there is like a scale up stage, usually when you get around this numbers, where the venture backed community is looking for like a 5-year exit and they're trying to get they're trying to get it to $1 billion valuation at these high growth companies. That's like always what it is. So that's 150 million in ARR. If you're trying to do that in 5 years from 20 to 30, you're doubling, tripling, like you're adding a ton on, right? So the only way to do that usually is to diversify your product lines. So now you're in a portfolio position. That's different than managing one single product line and a team of product managers, right? So the person who wants to be the CPO has to change their approach, right? It's no longer, I built a roadmap, I implemented a roadmap tool, I coached up a bunch of junior product managers, and we can all run with the developers and get features out. It's also like, I can steward this business into more growth opportunities. Like I am being visionary, I am being strategic, I'm being a good executive partner to my CEO, right? To help codify how we're actually going to do this. And the mindset shift here is about, I'm no longer the product leader, I'm a company leader. I happen to be responsible for the product, but I'm also responsible for the outcomes of the company. And I need to interface with the rest of the executives to make sure that we're all aligned. And I'm a good partner to them because like sales can't sell anything unless I build it, right? And I build them the right thing. Customer support's going to be mad at me if I build a bunch of crap. Technology, I can't get anything done without, right? Marketing's got to go out there and put the best value proposition forward. You can't do anything yourself as a product leader. Like you can build the best product in the world. If nobody learns about it, it goes, what does it matter? So you have to see yourself as more than just a product leader, right? More than just product. And that makes or breaks people at that scale. That's the thing that really, I think, determines whether you're going to keep growing and you're going to keep emerging. And I think the smart product leaders see it coming and they go, let me go figure out how to do this. Let me figure out where my gaps are. Let me talk to experienced CPOs who've been there already. Let me ask like my VCs and my PE firms, like to put me in touch with people who are at that stage so I can learn from them. And then they're very big on self-development, right? They're big on learning and filling in those gaps that they know will get them to that next level.
Yeah, it's almost like you're changing like the perception of what your team is instead of having your team being that functional team. Actually, your first team is that exec team, including the CEO, right?
Exactly.
I'm curious because I get this question all the time from people in our community who are like VPs of product and really want to make it to that CPO level. And the question that comes out is, what can I start doing today to start getting a feel for the role? It sounds from a mentorship or coaching, right? You can talk to people who have been in the role or kind of maybe have a lot of visibility into what that role looks like. But I'm curious from an like experiential or point of view, like what are some things that you can start doing in your company to maybe operate at the next scope as a VP of product?
Be extremely curious about the business. I don't see enough product leaders going to the CFO and asking them like, let's look at the financials together. Teach me how to read our P&L. Like, where are we growing? Where are we not growing? What are you seeing? What's our runway? Like just understand the financials. Also, understand the objective of the company. This is actually like something that totally changed my entire perspective of things. Because I think when I first started out in my career, like 15 years ago, I was going, man, people are making choices. Like I was at startups and stuff, like founders are making these choices and they're really dumb. Like obviously here's a customer problem and I don't get it. And why would we do that? That's not like best practice for product management. And I was so stuck on like, again, perfection, right? Or what we should be doing but I had such a narrow point of view of it, right? I had this much view. I didn't understand like all the other decisions that were going on. So you should be curious about why people are making decisions that you might not agree with, because there might be other factors out there that are influencing it. So I always tell like the VPs of product too, I'm like, go find out what the trajectory is for the business. And I think founders should be open about this. I think if you are VC backed, there is a financial outcome already assigned to your company and it's got a time horizon on it. And it's got what we think we're going to get for this company. Like it exists. It's there. Ask about it. Like if now you know why people are managing towards a certain thing. Like for instance, if you are 1 year away from somebody trying to exit your company to somebody else, whether it's getting acquired or invested in or somebody selling their share, like I guarantee you this was like a big thing that we would run into at Insight all the time. Nobody's going to rewrite your platform then. Right? Like the idea here is to get as much revenue and growth as you possibly can in that last year, because that's what your valuation is based off of. But if you are over here talking about platform rewrite and a complete redesign of the product and all of this stuff, like people are going to tune you out because they're going to figure out what is it that's going to grow the company, because that's the time horizon, that's the objective. Again, we talk a lot about outcomes. There is an outcome assigned to your company already. Like you have to go figure out what it is. And I think that is one good conversation to have at that company level. If you have the opportunity to step into a CPO role or you think you're going to have it, talk to your leadership about what a good outcome for your business is. Like, what are the expectations? Like, how long are you supposed to be? Like, again, we talked about 100% year over year growth for the next 3 years. Like that's usually set by the VC terms. But if you know that, now you know why, right? Like now you can go back to how do we actually get there? And then that sets the tone up for how you can figure out your product strategy. So I feel like having those conversations openly and trying to understand that backstory there usually blows a lot of people's minds at the beginning. And once I understood a lot more about how VCs work, how venture backed companies work, how even like public companies, like how it impacts the stock, what people are looking for, like the more you understand about how people are judging your company for success from the outside, the more you can make the right decisions inside it to get there. And the more you'll be aligned with all the leaders and your investors. And then you won't have friction about these things.
And it sounds like it's important to have both. Let's put the example of a venture-backed company, right? Let's say you're in a Series B company, right? Like the immediate next objective might be raise a Series C, and then maybe the long-term objective might be IPOing, right? And it sounds like you probably want to keep tabs of both of them, right? In a way.
And when you're going to do it, because like when you go out to raise a Series C, like you're going to have to show some financial objectives. It's going to be similar to exit planning. Like you still have to show momentum. And if you can't do that, you won't earn the right to go for the IPO. Like you won't get the funding. So the more you understand about what people are looking for, again, and judging that success and where you're at and what those stages are, the more you can shape your roadmap. And again, it gets into that. If everything was perfect and we were just solving problems for customers and not caring about the business, this is also why I get into, I'll get into that in a minute, but like not caring about the business, like we would just keep knocking off problems and like making this better, but then you wouldn't have a job because somebody pays your salary. So I am a huge proponent for solving customer problems. I don't think there is any business value in not solving customer problems. But when I lead sometimes about talking about the business value, I get a lot of pushback from the product community but what about the customer? And I'm like, I don't think there is any business value without solving customer problems. I get that. But you also need to understand which customer problems you solve by looking through the lens of the business value. Like that's how you choose. So it's a filter, right? It's a filter on which problems we want to go after, which problems we don't want to go after. And you can't solve them all. So like you're going to have to make choices there. So I do think it's this like careful balance, right? And as a product manager on a team, like we do have the luxury to focus mostly on the customer problem part because somebody's already probably looked at that business value part. By the time it gets to you, you've got product metrics and user metrics to actually manage towards. But you should understand how those connect back up to those business metrics. You should understand that ladder. And that's what you should get curious about early on in your career.
I was just gonna share a connection that I just made that I feel like for people that are interviewing for like BPs, a product role, or CPOs, like asking those questions in the interview process about like, hey, like what are we trying to hit and what are strategy to hit those things? It's such a good way to measure or to get a signal of how experienced or strategic that founder is. Because I'm sure there's probably like a huge delta between the first-time founder who has never raised a Series B or C versus someone who's done this before. Be like, hey, here's the 2 things that we need to hit. And if we hit it, we're going to be okay. So that's what we need to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if the chances of that company doing well are very much correlated with the clarity of here are the 2 things that we should focus on.
Yeah. And I think it's also about talking about the challenges, right? You should be like, okay, what are your biggest challenges you're trying to solve right now? And if they don't have clear, I see some like CEOs be like, it's the team just can't get their stuff together. And I'm like, okay, that's one challenge. What's another one? Everybody will blame teams. So I'm like, give me another one, but I want to see if they're aware enough to like, not just blame the teams, right? Like they don't have to take full ownership of everything breaking, but I just want to see like if they can understand market dynamics or customer dynamics. Like it should be, we've seen like big churn in this customer segment recently, and I don't really know what's going on. Okay, cool. That's a problem we could go look into and figure out. But I think when things aren't going well, a lot of leaders just tend to be like, it's the teams, go fix them. I'm like,
yeah, it's so easy to just blame people, right?
It's just them. And I've said to some too, when I'm talking about it, I'm like, okay, cool. Even like big companies, I go, all right, so if I'm going to go out and do an assessment on your product management organization, which I'll do, I look at like org design and I look at skill level of the team. I also evaluate the product strategies and try to see if there is one, how good it is. And I don't do it from like a analysis standpoint, but like, is it well defined and is it deployed well, right? Is there actually a process for this? And I look at operations, are we set up for scale? And I look at culture. And I say, if I come back and there's issues with the product strategy deployment, the operational piece and the culture piece, are you willing to fix it? Or is it just like, you think it's the team? Right. And they'll go, oh yeah, like, I guess you start to see if people just think it's like a them problem versus a us problem. And the great leaders are the ones who go, I'm willing to do anything to make this work. Right. Like they're like, you come back and you tell me that nobody understands my vision or my strategy, like I'll fix it. Like tell me what I need to do to fix that. But like, and they sometimes they're shocked. They're like, man, I really thought I like landed that. And I'm like, I know, it's wild. We asked everybody, they don't know what's going on. And they see that data and they start to go, okay, I have to fix some stuff. Taking that ownership, I think, is really important, right? Like looking
Yeah.
for somebody who's going to take that ownership, going to work with them. And I think CPOs should be looking for that when they figure out who to work for too.
This is all making sense. And I think that there's a lot that we've covered in this conversation so far that I think is still true today and is going to continue to be true. In the last couple of years, though, there's this whole new curveball that I think has been thrown into the mix, which is all this AI stuff. Right? And I don't think there's a single product leader that I know, from ICPMs all the way up to CPOs, CEOs, investors, right? So basically at every single level of the ecosystem, and even outside of tech, everyone is asking themselves, what's my AI strategy? How do I fit it in? We could probably spend several hours just talking about that. But I'm curious, do you think that there's anything in your thinking that has changed? Is there anything that you no longer believe to be true in this environment now that there's this AI variable that's floating around in everyone's head?
Ooh, good question. What's changed? I think a lot has changed. The way that I've been approaching it myself is I think the principles of product management remain the same. Like our objective is to achieve business value through solving customer problems. That general process of understanding your customers, doing some discovery around it, figuring out like what's the right thing to build, getting something together, testing it, getting feedback, measuring success, putting that into strategy, figuring out where to go. Like none of those things to me fundamentally change, but the way that we approach them, I think, is changing like crazy. Like the tools we use to do that, the way we approach those things, and like what actually goes into our company strategy, that's changing at like a more rapid pace than ever before, which is great. I'm excited about it. It's not just AI. I think we've finally got to a point too where like people accept that product management is a real role, which I'm very thankful for. But we've got tools out there that allow us to do our jobs better than ever before, right? Like we've got data analysis tools that are allowing us to go through data. We've got these tools that are aggregating customer insights into a way where we can actually see what people are saying during sales calls and during customer support tickets in ways that we've never been able to do before. And I love that. It's taking so much of the work away of doing like the grudge work. And I think that's where AI becomes really exciting, right? It's freeing us up to focus on the strategy that we've been talking about, right? Taking all of that stuff and doing the analysis, making sure the customers actually like it, like getting in front of customers and showing them prototypes, like getting the feedback, doing the stuff that really like matters. So all of that landscape of the way we do tools and the way that we can prototype these days and the way that we can collect all that information, that's changing super rapidly. And I think the teams that are harnessing that are going to be way more powerful than the teams that are not. On the flip side of that too, I think it's also going to show the people, the product managers who don't get it. I think it was really easy to like skirt by because people didn't understand product management really well. Now that we can measure results a lot better, we can understand a little bit better. If you're not really in tune with that strategy and showing results, I don't think AI is going to replace you, but I think somebody who's using AI is going to replace you, right, in a product management role. So I think there are going to be less PMs, right? I wrote like this product operations book right before LLMs became a really big thing. And everybody talks about how big this org chart is that we see under product ops. I'm completely ripping that up. Denise and I are ripping that up and going away from it because we don't need that anymore. And I'm super happy about that. I never wanted to hire a bunch of people for that. I thought it should always be solved through systems and tools. We just didn't have them before. So now we can do this like at scale with so few people on the product ops side, which is great, right? So we're going to be able to scale and be a lot more efficient. But I do think the leaders and the product managers who really understand how to do this analysis, how to set the strategy, how to do these pieces are going to succeed in this world. And that's what we're going to see fundamentally change.
Do you think that the introduction of AI into the mix has forced this like tsunami wave of build traps?
Oh,
Like what I mean
100%.
by that.
Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah, okay.
No, I love this topic. So,
Yeah.
yes, I was playing like with Bolt and Lovable. I think they're fantastic. Like I have a company that's like rethinking his entire experience, standing up a prototype on it to show to customers. So excited about it. I also think it's so easy to build a bunch of crap now, right? And this used to be an argument that I got into with people when I would try to teach them in like early days of teaching. I would teach about like MVPs and how we could do concierge testing and lightweight stuff. And they would go, code is so cheap now. I don't need to do any of this. I should just build it and put it out there and see if anybody uses it. And I'm like, once again, the whole point of experimenting is to be close to your customers to get that feedback. And if we're just building a bunch of crap in Lovable and Bolt and never doing that, again, that core of product management, getting the feedback, understanding the customers, being really close to them, it's still not going to work. And you're going to have all of this broken code, all of this. And let's be honest, like those things do not write a small amount of code. It's like very long and lengthy, and you don't need all that. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff out there that just does not work because people go, oh, wow, it's so much cheaper to just do this. Now I can do it myself. I think it's fantastic as like a testing mechanism to be able to spin up a prototype and use real data instantly. Awesome. So cool. Like really cool if you use it appropriately. So I do think we're in a trap of people like building a bunch of junk. I also see that in the AI strategies. There are companies that are like, I need AI as a label to pop in here, or nobody's going to take me seriously. So they like put a little AI bot in there and like, describe me what canvas you want to do. And it makes them a Trello board or something like that. I'm like, could have done that myself. Like I didn't need AI to do that for me. And I think the companies that are winning are the ones that fundamentally rethink their entire user experience with AI at the core, right? And they go, what are all the things that people are doing that they no longer have to do? Because we have ways to solve those problems or ways to get that information. And those are the cool product strategies, right? Those are the ones where you're like, whoa, like you mean I don't have to like sift through my entire inbox and do this now? Gemini lets me just search for that thing and do it. Like I can not worry about pulling in communications from 18 different places because there's an integration that goes through all of my stuff and summarizes and tells me like what the most important thing is from that information. That's the type of stuff I think that is going to make product strategy so cool coming forward, because it takes away so much burden from the user. And I think the expectations now for what user experience should be is going to be so much higher from that reason. Everybody's like talking about it being a chatbot like ChatGPT. That's not it. It's about all the manual work that you used to have to do and all the copying and pasting into different systems and stuff like that. That stuff is what's getting really exciting, I think, about AI, because it's adding this layer on top of it where we were never able to do that before with LLM synthesize all this data. But I also think people are like thinking that AI can do a little more than it can in some places. So I worry about them not using it in the right places and instead putting it in places that need like really good discernment or judgment and just like leaving it up to a bot. And that's not where you do it, right? Like you do it in the stuff that's burdensome, and then you leave certain stuff up to the experts.
Yeah, I'm glad we went there because that was where I was going to go. Yeah, I think a trend that I'm seeing, especially in companies that have been around for a while, have maybe enterprise customers. I think that's where they're in the biggest risk at falling for that AI build trap. And I think, as you said, like one, it's maybe you have the exec team pushing, hey, our investors, Wall Street wants us to see like our AI strategy. And then it's like, we need to roll it out ASAP for next quarter to see the results. And then at the same time, too, maybe you start playing with these tools like B0 and Bolt, and then you're like, oh, so cool. Now I can ship this feature end to end super fast and make my customer happy without maybe spending that much design or engineering resources. But I have conviction that the companies that are going to win are the ones that are able to kind of live in that future and really think a few steps ahead. Like an example, like if I'm designing for a car, like it's very likely that in 5-10 years, like it doesn't make as much sense to design for a driver because maybe there'll be self-driving and you want to focus on like kind of that passenger experience. So I'm curious, like from a product strategy perspective, like how do you, if you're like in a company and you're like so locked in on like that user that maybe won't be the user you're solving for, like what can you do to live in that future and imagine what that world could look like maybe in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years? Like what does that exercise look like, you think?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding deeply like what AI is good at, what it's not good at, but also where it's trending towards. If you listen to a lot of the stuff that they're working on that's not there yet, you start to understand like where the models are moving. And like last year looks very different than what it is this year. So like you see how fast it's changing. But I do think you start with understanding what it can do and what problems it could solve. Then I think you imagine if we could solve those problems, let's pretend this works perfectly in 3 years. Like what's different about my user's experience or my customer's experience? Like what problems does that translate to them where I could put the AI on it? But I think we also have to, because we're in such uncertain times, if you do that too early, you're not going to get the adoption, because I still think some people are fearful. I still think there's going to be a curve, right? It's getting rapidly adopted in many, and it depends what industry you're in, right? If we talk about this in like super high tech, yeah, your adoption is going to be way earlier than other people. But if you're making stuff for consumers and let's say people who are not technical savvy at all, like they might be afraid that their data is going somewhere or that AI is going to steer them wrong, right? So you have to be aware of your market and how fast it's going to change that way too. And I think that's what sets people up for success there is you want to reimagine that experience, but you also want to meet people where they are, right? So it's okay to vision big. I think that anchors everybody on where we could go, but you have to have a really nice path for how we're going to get there and how we're going to win the trust of people and how we're going to win them over as customers and users along this path, right? So they want to grow with us into that vision because we know it will be great for them, but we have to take them along for the journey. And that's a really big part of it. It's like change management, almost like for your customers, right? I'm helping them through this AI change and I'm going to be like a strategic partner for you, but I'm not forcing you into something that you don't want or you don't understand too early. And I think having like the best interest of your customers at heart right there and like understanding them deeply and empathizing with them, that's what's going to let them win, right? So you can still be big and strategic. And I think you should. I still think everybody should be looking at their vision of what it could be. But I do think you're going to have to bring it back to a reality standpoint today and really get that strategy right to morph into it. So you're ready to go when it's there, but you're not pushing everybody into it today when they're not ready.
I think an example of something here that I think I'm personally skeptical of fundamental psychology changing about is us trusting agents to like really take action on our behalf with critical tasks. And I know for a lot of people, they say, well, the tech isn't there yet. I'm like, okay, so let's assume the tech keeps improving and agentic capabilities and MCPs and all these integrations keep evolving. Is the underlying human psychology in 2 or 3 years going to be such that Marc is going to trust AI to respond to prospective Supra members about questions they have about the community when they email him, or like one of my students emailing me about my course? It's an interesting experiment to run. And I think that I personally am skeptical that the answer will be yes. Now maybe I'll look back in a few years and eat my words. But if you ask me, will people want to engage with generative AI using natural human language in 3 years? The answer is absolutely yes. I think that's still the primary way people want to do these things. Now, what comes out on the other end of that is going to just get better and more robust and high fidelity. But that's an example of a thought experiment I'm running right now about where these technologies are taking us. So maybe you could argue I'm a little bit of a bear on people truly embracing like agentic technology to take action on their behalf.
Yeah. I think it comes down to how high are the stakes, right? Great example. I like keep bringing up. There was AI's been out there, right? In healthcare, they were using AI to go through claims and just deny people, right? And it turns out that AI model was completely wrong and it denied like 99% of claims. People do not trust it in healthcare. Like you shouldn't be using it for that, right? There needs to be human intervention. So I think in certain cases when the stakes are high and we're dealing with people's lives and financials and like all of these things, right? You will not be able to remove a human from the equation, but you could speed up that human's task, right? So I think you can make those things more efficient with AI, but you need like a last line of support for somebody to like really check through it. And that will always be the case for the foreseeable future, I believe, when it comes to dealing with AI. And that's how it should be, right? Like you're going to need some discernment there. That's a great example of a company just getting way too ahead of itself and then executing really poorly. On the other side, there's like little things I think that are not super high stakes. Yeah, somebody asks a question about a course and it's like a readily known answer. Sure, like the thing can email them back and it would be fine. If somebody asks you like a really deep question about like how it applies to their context, probably can't use AI for that. So I think there's going to be a lot of discernment around like when is AI the right model to use? Like when are these choices the right models to use? And when are they not? And I also think companies need to be really careful about that because it's super risky to do what we talked about in that insurance company. And just that was really bad press and they were being sued for a lot of money because people died. You don't want to do that. That's not where you want to go. But some basic chat support stuff, okay, if it's not table stakes, fine. It's probably better than like staying on hold with a phone. But when that's also like where I hate when people try to automate stuff like phone support, right? Like, oh, we're not even going to make it possible for you to talk to a human. You're just going to have to go through this. Like, no, that's not the right way to do it. I think we have to embrace we're not going to automate everything. That's okay. And that's probably what's going to set some companies. It's pretty funny that now I'm thinking about it. Like I'm talking about this on LinkedIn. I feel like where's that like personal flavor when everything is written by LLMs now? It's probably the companies that are more personalized that are going to win in the future when everything else is a robot. So how do you bake that into your strategy as well?
Yeah, I think that's why when people say product management is dead or whatever, I'm like,
Yeah, I don't
no,
think it
like
is.
there's
No.
someone who needs to think through all of those things, right? Back to your example, Ben, like I actually can see a world where AI answers like 80% or 90% or even 99% of your questions.
Yeah.
But I think it's all about like, how do you get Ben to trust to answer the questions, right? And I think you have to build like that hand-holding experience that maybe in the beginning, it sends you all the like pre-written replies and you like answer them, right? And then as you see, hey, it's getting 99% of them right, like now I feel more comfortable trusting it. And then at one point you're gonna be, hey, like actually just escalate the ones that you're like, I'm not sure how to answer this, or I don't feel comfortable with my answer. And I think at that point you probably would feel comfortable
Yeah.
having 99% of them answered by
Well,
it's like an
well,
intern, right?
but here's the importance of understanding the goals and the value proposition to your customers and the people that are working with you. So my goal is not to every touch point with a student is an opportunity to leave them feeling like they just got a white glove like access to me, and like they got personalized feedback or a personalized perspective they couldn't get anywhere else. So the moment I start thinking about automating that, it brings down the perceived value that
Yeah.
I'm delivering them.
Well, that's also
So
your value
yeah,
proposition though, right? Like
correct,
that's like your strategy and your value proposition. So in that
correct.
case, I totally agree with you. If that's the thing that sells, that's not something that you automate away. Right. And I think in some other businesses, right, there's some frequently asked questions that people can't find because their websites suck and they need an answer that's straightforward, right? They're not buying Ben's course. They're going, I need to change my flight. Can you do that for me? I
Totally.
don't want to. That's where AI wins. So I agree. It's like what's the intent from the customer?
Hmm.
Where do they find value? And your customers find value talking to you. So it's like you don't want to give that to a robot.
That's why strategy is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes you different. What's the fundamental value you bring to people, and how do you solve their problems in a way that reinforces that value and gets some kind of positive flywheel going in the future? And if AI fits into that strategy for me and anyone else, you all, anyone listening, yeah, like if there's like a repeatable thing that you do that's low stakes, I really like that framework, Melissa. Like it's low stakes if you get it wrong, and it's also like you don't get that much credit if you get it right, then maybe that's something that's like a good candidate for something to automate. I know some people we've talked on the podcast are like, if I do it more than once, I automate it. And I personally have not gotten to that
I haven't
point
got
where
to that point either. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's also because there is a learning curve. So we were talking about all this stuff. I think that is possible. And I also think people are talking about AI as if all this stuff works perfectly. If you've used Lovable or Bolt and try to get it to make a prototype, sometimes it just does something weird and you're like, can you fix that? And it just doesn't, right? It just doesn't work. So you're like, okay, now I'm back to coding. And I've started like 10 AI tools where I'm like, this is really exciting. Let me build the thing I've been thinking about just to try it and see what's out there. And then I get stuck on these small little things. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now it's just faster for me to do it myself. And so I don't think we're over that hurdle yet. I do not think that's today. I hope that's in the future because I would love to use some of these things a little bit more dedicatedly because there's a bunch of just junk I want to take care of. But we're not there yet. And I think some companies and some businesses are operating like we are. I've seen them talk about cutting a bunch of engineers because it'll just automate away with code and stuff like that. We're not there yet. It's not at that point. Can we be a little more efficient? Sure. Should you cut half your people today? Probably gonna be very sorry if you did that.
I know we're almost at time, but maybe super quick. I'm super curious. Is there maybe one or two workflows that were 100% there and that it's a game changer for you right now in terms of
Well,
AI?
I wished. I use I think some basic stuff. Like I use ChatGPT with their analysis tool, which has been really amazing. Like their spreadsheets now that they
the
can
deep
read it.
search or no?
Oh my God, it's
Oh, their
amazing. Deep,
canvas? Yeah.
two things. Deep research,
Yeah.
love it. Instead of going to Google and like trying to pick through everything, I can get like a research report out there so fast. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this. And then two, I get like a bunch of surveys and stuff, like course feedback, things like that, right? Like little things in Excel data. You can feed it now into ChatGPT and it can analyze it and then spit out like summary reports. I still go through and read a bunch of the comments, but I'm like, take these numbers and give me the average, give me the median. What's this? What's that? I want to statistically analyze this. Like, I think that's huge because now it's like going through that. I still have to look through, if I'm going to use it for anything like super important, I still look through everything and make sure it's right. But that speeds it up so much faster than like me clicking through Excel and trying to make data models out of it and stuff like that. I think those things have been really game changing for just like some of the most basic things that I do every day. And every time I get something in there, like writing is a big part for me. Also, just seeing how it rewards stuff. Like sometimes I just need to get a thought out and I'm going, like, I cannot figure out how to word this. And I can describe it and they can put it into words. And I'm like, oh, that's it. But then I would write it this way. So then I like that type of stuff. It's almost like having a brainstorming partner going back and forth with it. Those things have been really helpful on those pieces. I'm still like working on trying to make my little GPTs and stuff like that. I have it in certain things, but string them all together. I don't have any like AI agents or anything like that. I would love to automate some stuff that's just like stupid little things that I do every day, but I'm still not there yet. And I'm learning. I'm still figuring it out. Like every time there's a tool, I'm like, let me just try it and see if I can do this one thing that annoys me and make it better.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that and just for sharing all your thoughts with us about product strategy and just like leadership and finding the right fit. I think this was an awesome conversation. For folks that want to learn a bit more about you, one, I'm sure they could Google you, but is there anywhere else that you would direct them to just learn more about what you're thinking about these days and how might they be helpful to you?
I think I post a lot on LinkedIn. So if you find me on LinkedIn, Melissa Jean Perri, you can find a lot of my thinking there. Online, our school is at Product Institute. And then I have a podcast, Product Thinking Podcast as well. So we interview a bunch of leaders and CPOs on what they're thinking about and how they set strategy and their AI opinions, how they form teams. So there's a lot going on there too. So I think those are the 3 main websites to find me at.
Awesome. We'll include links to those in the show notes. Thank you again so much for joining us, Melissa. This was a lot of
Thanks for
fun.
having me. This was great.
Thank you so much.